Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sure.
Okay. The first question that I want to ask is, what is your background in teaching and your background in leadership?
Okay. I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a minor in history in 1993. And then I began teaching right after graduation and taught second grade for 10 years. Then I moved into an associate superintendent role in 2004 and have been doing that ever since.
Do you like that?
I do like it. There's parts of it that I love and parts of it that I don't like. I love mediating conflict and creating solutions. I'm not in love of traveling so much. Our conference is so big. It goes up through the top of Wyoming down to Farmington, New Mexico, and I don't always love the travel.
Oh, I bet. You're away from home a lot, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not as much as you would think, but probably a week a month. So fortunately, most of our schools are within 2 hours.
Wow. Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm. I can do Cheyenne in one day, and then down to Pueblo and Canyon City.
Wow. All right. What would you say is the most vital qualification for a teacher to have in order to succeed?
People skills. If you don't have people skills, all the organization skills in the world are not going to help you connect with the students in your classroom.
What do you think qualifies a teacher to become a teacher leader?
Someone who is not complacent with just doing the basic minimum. Someone who's always learning. If a teacher is constantly learning and open to new ideas, then they're automatically going to rise above the rest.
Do you think that most teachers, if they took a StrengthsFinders test, would be learners?
I thought it would be higher when we did it in our conference. I
Really?
thought that it would be higher than what it was. They're so generous of spirit, a huge amount in empathy, and in compassion, and in the people skills, but not necessarily into learners.
Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Can teacher leader qualifications be acquired, or must one already possess them?
Wow, that's a great question. I honestly think that a teacher leader can want to be a teacher leader, but if they're not motivated and self-motivated, then they're going to fall back to that where they're most comfortable. I do think that if they're motivated to get to a certain position that's very concrete, then they'll work towards that. But by and large, I've found that some teachers are... I have a friend who's taught kindergarten for 18 years, and she never wants to do anything else. But she's very successful at that.
Mm-hmm.
But yet I get students who graduate from college, and I know right away that they are eventually going to be in charge, whether they're going to be a principal, going to be an associate superintendent, because they have that affinity for leadership.
And you think that has mostly to do with people skills?
I think that's innate effort and desire to grow.
Okay. What role does attitude play in the life of a teacher?
Oh my goodness. Attitude is everything. Attitude, the teacher is the thermometer of the classroom, and if they come in and they have a poor attitude, the whole classroom, I can just tell. And if they come in with a good can-do attitude, then the teachers, I think there's even research that says students do better with teachers who connect with them and who believe in them than the teacher who just teaches to standards.
Very interesting. If I were to ask teachers on your team what characteristic you are known for, what do you think they would say?
I couldn't even guess, Bonnie.
Okay.
I do have a willingness to listen. I love the teachers in Rocky Mountain. I truly do. And I think they would say that I'm willing to listen, whether it's a 5:30 phone call or a 10:30 phone call at night.
Yes, and as one of the teachers under you, I would agree with that.
Oh, good.
You are a very good listener. And you kind of give off a feeling that you have time to listen. It's okay. Go ahead and say what you're going to say. And that's very encouraging. I mean, from this end.
That's the best part of my job.
Is it?
Mhm.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
How does the leadership here in this school affect your own leadership?
A leader, a principal who is a true leader, who's able to have listening skills and problem-solving skills, makes my job easier because parents and families will go to that individual instead of jumping over to me. So I can tell there's issues when a parent will call me and say they don't like where their child is sitting in the classroom. Then that tells me that they don't have communication with the teacher, with the principal, with the board chair, with the people in that particular setting.
So a filtering process actually makes your job easier.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
you can be more effective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was just wanting to make sure I understood what
Yeah,
you were saying.
no, that's exactly it.
How do you deal with negative feedback?
I have to really internalize and think, what is my role in that negative feedback? What can I do to change? Are you talking about negative feedback towards me personally or towards?
Yes.
Wow. We have lovely teachers. So I can't think of a particular instance, but I would welcome feedback just to grow from.
Okay. If a teacher were to come to you and say, I've had this negative feedback, what would your advice be to that teacher?
I would say, well, let's look at it. How much of it do you think is true, and how much of it do you think is that person's perception? And then what can we change to help with that person's perception without changing who that person is? But if for example, if a teacher comes in, a parent comes in and says that a teacher is sarcastic, then I would take that seriously. And that teacher, sometimes they don't hear it, they don't see it, they don't think
Sure.
they think they're being funny. So then we role play, and I'll say, well, how did that make you feel? How could you think that would affect a student?
Okay. I actually really appreciate that because I had never thought of role playing to figure out
It's
if
a
someone
counseling
is
technique.
aware of it or not. Oh, that's really cool. And you are a counselor also.
Yeah, I got my master's in counseling right around the same time I did the transition.
Okay.
So, yeah.
What do you feel is the best way for your school to influence the community around it?
I think it could be little tiny things like we have a little school that goes and it rakes leaves in the neighborhood. And it just leaves a little note on the door that says, courtesy of the name of the school. Just little tiny things, like another school does little tiny gift baskets of oranges and apples and just leaves them on the front doorstep of the neighboring houses. That just says, courtesy of Mile High Academy or Greeley Adventist School. I don't think it has to be anything major. I just think, or if you're doing an event, post it outside and welcome the community.
Okay. Those are some really good ideas. When you become aware of a change that needs to take place in one of your schools, how do you react?
Like a personnel change, or
It could include a personnel change or any other change. Maybe test scores need to be higher, or maybe
like an improvement.
Yes, any kind of change.
If it's any sort of change that will make the school better, the first thing I do is just make an appointment to just lay out the documentation and to get the buy-in of the teacher. Because I personally can't make a change for any school unless there's buy-in from the teacher and from the teacher leader. So, for example, if I see something, it could just be something similar, like like the dress code is horrendous. The kids are wearing terrible stuff. But
Okay.
I can go in there and say, have you considered dress code? Have you considered looking at something to help the kids look more unified? They can give me all the lip service, but until they get the buy-in of the parents, the board, the pastor, nothing will change. So I create a dialogue and just ask a lot of questions.
Okay. Do you think it would be beneficial for every teacher in your school to have a personal leadership coach?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
What kind of benefits would we gain from that?
I think a huge thing is teachers are so busy, incredibly busy, doing the day-to-day mundane, keeping their heads above water, that they forget how important it is to set goals. And if they could have a leader, someone to say, where do you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? What would make your program better? What would make your teaching easier? Then I think it couldn't help but lay the groundwork for some intrinsic learning. So,
What do you feel will be the biggest challenge to teacher leaders, and how will this affect the school environment?
time, definitely time. Finding time for themselves. Teacher leaders, by the very name of it, are teaching.
Right.
And so for them to take on the load of motivating their peers would just be time intensive. They would have to have time away from their classroom to just focus on this.
Right. As a teacher leader, how important is it that you communicate with the stakeholders in your organization?
Huge. If your stakeholders don't buy into your vision, then there'll be unnecessary criticism because they won't know what's going on or the why of it. If your stakeholders understand the why of what you're doing, then they're going to be behind it 100%, which will give you allowances for spending time in classes or meeting with teachers or doing whatever it entails.
So that communication time to get the buy-in?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Huge.
All right. If I currently aspire to be a teacher leader, what would your advice be to me about approaching my organization?
I think to just lay out a plan, not so much different than a very simple business proposal, with what your goals would be and the basic steps of what that would look like. But by and large, the organization needs to see the outcome. So whether that's morale will be up, more people will go back to school, or student organizations will be created, whatever the outcome would be, if that's outlined with the steps to get there, I think that's really all it would take.
So you would need to communicate a vision that you have.
Yes.
And how that would benefit that
Absolutely.
that certain situation.
Yeah.
How would you build a relationship with your subordinates and community leaders?
I think it's key to ask them for some time, but not ask them for anything. So without going in there and saying, can you fund this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do this? But I think just to say, I think you're really important and you're valuable, and I just want you to hear an idea. And that's it. Without asking for, because I get asked for so much,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's nice just to say, just to go in and not have that expectation someone's asking for money, or for funding, or for permission to get something that no one else is getting.
Mm-hmm.
To just go in there and say, what do you think about this? I value your opinion. That would be huge.
Okay. And are you willing to work with others in the community who do not share your ideologies?
Oh my goodness. Our best practices are not limited to Adventist schools. And so I'm all about getting out into the community, into public schools, into secular organizations, and then pulling it back and making it our own. I think you guys canceled school in a few weeks so that the academy can go into Denver School of Science and Technology, because I love what they're doing. And I want that vision in this school.
Okay. Well, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being willing to take your time to do this. And I think I picked the right person to ask. I appreciate the insight that you've given me.
You are
It's really
welcome.
it's really gonna help me out personally as well as,
Oh, good.
you know.
Good, good. You're welcome.